Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. Today I'm really excited because I'm about halfway through Wano now, and I realize that I still need to record my Reverie video. So here I am doing that now. I have been really just loving One Piece. This will be spoilers all the way through Reverie. I will not be talking about Wano. Just know, for those who have gone beyond Reverie, I'm just really loving Wano. I think some of it's a little too long. Some of the characters I'm not as into as I have in previous arcs. But there's a lot of really fascinating things going on in Wano. But before we get into that, before talking about Wano, we gotta talk about Reverie, which is sort of like the fourth to last arc that I have to cover. So we're approaching the end, and I'm just going to go basically through my notes as I usually do, because this is a 3 episode arc on One Piece. So I think I have enough time to talk about everything in the arc. So I think compared to like Whole Cake Island, where I sort of just had to talk about the highlights, this arc is short enough that I'm able to talk about everything. So I think that will be really fun for people. But right in the beginning, we get the 50 world leaders coming to I guess it's Mary Joa is where they are going, or New Marineford. I don't know exactly where the Reverie is happening. Maybe I missed that, but Chopper, we get a little scene with the Sunny crew with the Straw Hats, and Chopper has a Germa can now, so he talks about how he's going to use this can eventually in order to transform himself into a more badass version of himself, because he saw Germa 66 and Judge and Sanji's family just have one of the coolest scenes in the fucking arc, in my opinion, where they all sort of went like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers mode, as I said in that video. And I'm really excited to see what Chopper does with this, because Chopper's one of my favorite of the Straw Hats, but I don't know how he will handle a Germa can. I think that would be really fun to watch. But while on the sea, or on the ship, we also are revealed that Zeus, the storm cloud, has joined Nami and is residing within her climate baton. And that's really fun to me, because one of Big Mom's allies, who have been with her for so many years, 50 years or so now, they just willingly left Big Mom and went to Nami, because Nami has those really yummy storm clouds. So I really enjoy that kind of reveal where everyone's hanging out and Zeus shows up, and some people think that Big Mom is near, but Nami is like, oh no, he's my friend now. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect. That was just really fun. But Carrot, who's one of the minks, she gets a newspaper, and it basically just says that Luffy masterminded the attempt on Big Mom, the assassination attempt, and that he masterminded this with Sanji and Jinbei. And Sanji's bounty is now at 330 million, so it is officially higher than Zoro's. And we have this really funny moment where they both sort of butt heads for a second. And I always love Zoro's and Sanji's rivalry, even though it's not like a deep rivalry. They don't hate each other, but they're always competing against each other to sort of be better than the other. And I really love that. I think it's a really fun sort of running joke, I guess. It's not really a joke, but it makes me laugh. So I think it's fun. But we then see Neptune being really happy about Jinbei joining Luffy, and Shirahoshi, who is the princess, says she wants to go to the Reverie, and we hear about Luffy taking control of various pirate crews in the newspaper, and also that that Sabo and Ace are brothers, and Shirahoshi and Neptune sort of talk about it, and that's really fun. And one of my favorite moments from this arc was right here, which is that Carrot and Luffy are reading through the newspaper, and they read about this fifth new Yonko. And who is the fifth new Yonko? Well, it's Luffy. I was just laughing my head off at that reveal because I was so blindsided by that reveal. And I love it so much. Like, it is so fun to sort of have Luffy be one of the new Yonko, because he is, like, I don't know, like, I think he is powerful enough to be one of the Yonko, but it's so funny to me that, like, it is an official thing now, because in my head I was like, oh, I never thought that Luffy would be one of the Yonko. Like, I would like to pretend like I thought about it and sort of saw it coming, but I did not. It was such a funny and unexpected reveal, and it's one of my favorite moments outside of one of the final moments of this arc. But I really, really loved that. And we have this really funny reaction from Akainu. His real name is Sakazuki, but he just has one of the funniest reactions to this bit of news. And it's basically a reaction of just supremely being pissed off. Like, he is the number one angriest guy on the earth right now, because Akainu almost killed Luffy, and Jinbei was able to get Luffy out of Marineford, and they both survived. And so it's really funny seeing Akainu just seeing Luffy continue to climb the rankings and become one of the Yonko. Like, that is such a, like, amazing moment. It's one of my favorite moments in the series in terms of, I guess, information being shared, because just the reaction that everybody has to Luffy being one of the Yonko is just so fun. But, so next we see Rebecca and the Tantadin people, and she is with Riku, and they are sailing to the Reverie, and they do not have a marine escort. So that's interesting, because all of them basically have one. And there's a few pirates who are watching for kidnappings, because we hear a kidnapping of Princess Kuman, we get a very tiny window sort of scene with her, of her being kidnapped in the Marine Saber, and then bring her to the Reverie. And that's a really fun moment, because we have another scene where one of the ships at Dressrosa carrying King Riku, a missile is shot at it. And Captain Kobe, who is one of the Marines that we meet very early in the series. I think Kobe I prefer in the Netflix adaptation than I do in the series. I think he's very underutilized. I love the way that the adaptation dealt with his character and sort of brought him to relevance a lot earlier, or had him just be more relevant than what he is in the, I guess, the series, which is that Kobe just sort of shows up sometimes, and we don't really have much time with him, but he shows up and he deflects the missile, and he boards the ship and is talking with King Riku and Shirahoshi. Well, not Shirahoshi, she's from Fishman Island, but he talks to Kiros and a bunch of other Dressrosa people, and Kobe is caught up by Kiros and the other members of the crew, and they tell him all about Luffy and Dressrosa, and Kiros is really baffled by Kobe not taking credit for saving them, and that Kobe is flustered about it, and he says that he would hate for Luffy to cover for the Marines, because of, I guess it would reveal his allegiance with Luffy. And that's sort of something that he has been secretly having for a very long time, since one of the first arcs, I think it's Along Park, that Kobe is in. It's been a very long time since I've read the early series. But Luffy finds out his latest bounty, which is 150 million, which he is very pissed off about it. And it was really funny to me because my first thought was that he is misreading this, and it ends up that he is misreading this because at the end of the episode, of episode 1, Brooke picks up the newspaper while everyone's sort of arguing about the bounty totals. And Brooke looks at it and he's like, oh, it's tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100 million, a billion. And he realizes that Luffy's actual bounty is 1.5 billion with a B. I fucking love this moment. I think it was one of the funniest moments for me because I saw it coming and I was anticipating sort of that big emotional sort of like, what? Like big reaction to this because that was my reaction when he was announced as the newest Yonko, Luffy was. And so when I heard his full bounty of 1.5 billion, I was like, yeah, that's more like it because 150 million is not at all like close to what the Yonko are bountied at. And we'll get more of that later. I think it's Wano that we get a lot of these characters' bounties for the first time. But yeah, it is so fun, just this entire arc. But before we go into episode 2, we see a few pirates attack the land of Leluja, which is led by Pinkbeard, one of the many colored beards that we have in the series: Whitebeard, Brownbeard, Pinkbeard. I'm sure there's more. But we have a giant trident that pushes from the sort of this undulating stone waves that are happening. And we have a big giant by the name of Morley come out, and he's with a jetpack guy named Lindbergh. And we also are introduced to this character of Lady Bello Betty. And then a giant crow cloud guy shows up, and this is my favorite guy out of these people, named Kurasu. And these are really cool people. They're part of the Revolutionary Army, and they are some of my favorite new characters because they have such cool designs. I love vampire sort of like stories, and I love when people explode in clouds of birds and bats and crows or whatever. And so I was really excited to see the character of Kurasu. He is my favorite so far. And it is so fun to sort of see this type of character in One Piece. So, and we also see Ivankov and Dragon are hanging out at the feast at the Revolutionary Army's base. And Lindbergh actually calls Sabo, which is a really cool sort of reveal. And he calls Sabo and Dragon and plans to declare war on the Celestial Dragons, which is a really big thing that's going to happen because nobody at all goes against the Celestial Dragons. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And we have Bello, who is a rally fruit user, so she's like a flag person. She waves her flag and tells people to rise up against the pirates. And Lindbergh freezes everyone's guns, and Kurasu's crows take out the rest of the weapons from the Pinkbeard pirates. And then Bello gives a Viva card to the Revolutionary Army, to one of the milk ladies who is trying to deliver these jugs of milk for these kids. And they give her a Viva card on how to get back to the Revolutionary Army. And so that's really cool. And we get this moment with Kaido where he is really pissed off about losing the Smile Fruit. And Big Mom is also pissed because Morgan's the World Economic or World Information newspaper guy. I forget the acronym, but it's like WEF, I believe. He said that Luffy won the fight against Big Mom. which is a really big deal because he did win by running away and sort of being like, okay, I got everyone out, I got Sanji out, let's just go fight Kaido, and we're going to sort of rest and get more of our crew back in, get Zoro, get Nico Robin, get Frankie, because not all of them were there at Whole Cake Island. And so Luffy is like, okay, let's go fight, Big Mom later. Once we're rested up, we're more powerful, we have more of our allies with us. And she calls, I was about to say Yonko, but she calls Kaido at one point, and she tells him, like, we need to go back to the way that things were in our history when we were friends, and we need to take down Luffy. And that is a really cool moment as well. And we get a scene with Blackbeard saying that it's really premature to call Luffy a Yonko. And we get a very short, very brief appearance with Shanks, and it just sort of shows him, and it ends, and we go to the next episode, which is when things start to go crazy. So Akainu is now at New Marineford, and Marineford, the new one, is super well defended. We have this pretty long introduction establishing shot where you see many cannons along the ramparts and the walls. You have these really large stone towers. You just have a lot of things going on now. They've definitely bolstered up the defenses, and the old Marineford is now the G1 base. And we see Akainu is at New Marineford, and Fujitora is at Marijoa. And that really pisses off Akainu because he told Fujitora that he's not allowed to come near Marine Base until he has Law's and Luffy's head. And that's a big deal because Fujitora, he did not seem that gung-ho about taking the heads of these two characters during Dressrosa. So it's really interesting that this is sort of a thing that Akainu is holding over Fujitora's head, because to me, Akainu doesn't have as much sort of control as Fujitora. Like, Fujitora just is constantly maneuvering around Akainu and sort of doesn't listen to Akainu. And that's a really interesting dynamic that I really enjoy, because I do not like Akainu. I think he's a really terrible person. He has a very rigid sense of justice, and I don't... And when contrasting him against Fujitora, who is one of my favorite characters in One Piece, it's very easy for me to cheer on when Akainu is just constantly kind of being swept off and dismissed by Fujitora. And I just love those scenes. Kizaru is listening while Sengoku is also watching. And we hear of Admiral Ryokyugu, who is also named Aramaki. He's at Marijoa. And we get a few, information that Marijoa is sort of New Marineford is the gateway to Marijoa. And so it's within the Red Line. Old Marineford is the G1 base now. I said that already. But Redport is one of the two bases that people go to in order to get into the Holy Land of Marijoa. And so they use bubble gondolas, which are really cool. I really love the design of them. I would love to ride in one if they existed. And we get introduced to this really, really funny character, at least it's funny to me, of Hamburger. And his real name is Abe Lincoln. And he has exactly the same sort of look as Abe Lincoln in U.S. history. So I really love that moment. That was just a really funny sort of reveal for me. I don't know how important he is to the series or how prevalent he is, whether he has the key to the One Piece or not. I don't know. Um, I just really love sort of these wacky characters that Oda brings forth, and it's always based on history, and it's just really fun. But King Neptune shows up finally at Mary Joa, and so does Vice Admiral Garp, Luffy's grandfather. Garp is someone who I really want to see him in action. I think he is a really cool character. He has a really interesting history with Luffy, Ace, Gold Roger, and sort of the Marines, because he is called the hero of the Marines. And he meets with King Starry, who is the king of Joa, and he was adopted by Sabo's parents, and he has a goal of becoming a celestial dragon. I don't really know exactly who the Starry is. I have some interest in them, but I don't really like the celestial dragon, so the moment that he said that he wanted to become one, I immediately dismissed him as a character who I wanted to pay attention to, because I don't have any investment in the celestial dragons. I hate them. I hate the organization. I hate the characters within the celestial dragons. I think the Doflamingos were the most interesting. But in terms of, or the Don Quixotes, I should say, not the Doflamingos. That's one of them. But I just really did not care for them outside of the Don Quixotes. So I'm just kind of like whatever on this. It's cool that he has a relationship with Sabo, but I don't really have any interest in this character right now. But all of them board Bondola too, to marry Joa except Garp. Fujitora is told by Ryokyugu that Akainu wanted him shipped away, and he's then asked about Vegapunk, who has recently completed a very big project, and that they don't need the 7 warlords anymore because of that project having been completed. What is this? I know that Vegapunk is very central to what's the arc? Egghead, but I don't know anything about Vegapunk. He keeps being talked about for a second there, very early on. I thought Vegapunk was dead, but it ends up that he just left Punk Hazard and went to the world government, and we haven't really gone word about him since. So I'm very curious to know what he's actually having worked on and have finished, and also sort of what he knows, because I feel like with Oda, every single character has a lot more information than we assume. And I think Dr. Vegapunk is a character who knows a lot of what's going on and can sort of tell us about more what's going on. I don't know. It's a character that I wish we saw more of throughout the series, but I know he's coming soon. So, cool. We hear that this Starry guy hasn't eaten in 3 years, which is really cool. That's probably the only thing that I think I noted down that was interesting about him. Morley makes an appearance, and then Kurasu, the Raven guy, shows up, or the Crow guy. Sabo is here. He's in disguise, and we see a huge golden building at Mary Joa, which has an escalator run by slaves underneath the ground. So that was a really crazy reveal. I was thinking to myself how sort of ridiculous it would be, because we have this scene of everyone walking towards the big castle at Mary Joa. I think it's called Castle Pangea. If I have that wrong, let me know. I thought it would have been so ridiculous when we saw the first sort of thing of it, because it's just a moving ground, like an escalator, moving across the ground, and it's just this giant stone slab, basically. And I thought to myself, oh, I bet the world government has, like, slaves under this, and is making them push the escalator. And then, like, 2 seconds later, the shot changes, and it shows a bunch of slaves underneath the slab pushing it. Exactly what I thought it would be. And I was like, okay, I was right about that. I was really kind of struck by sort of the cruelness of the world government, because my brain went there because I didn't think that the world government would actually do that, and I thought that was just such a cruel thing to do. But let me see. So we see a scene of Shirahoshi being approached by many different royal suitors, and she rejects them all. Vivi and Karu show up from Alabasta, which is really fun. I'm very happy that they're here. And they discuss Luffy Land with Leo, who is from Tantado. And Rebecca shows up and talks about Luffy. Bartolomeo, who is Luffy's #1 fan from Dressrosa, he is handing out Luffy pens and just handing it out to everybody. Wapol, the castle leader, he shows up, and Luffy is... and Wapol talks about how Luffy is now an enemy to him, which is interesting. Dalton and Kureha show up. They are both from Drum Island. They are... Dalton was the leader of Drum Island, and Kureha was Dr. Chopper's doctor friend, who took him under her wing. And I was really excited to see them again. They are characters that I've missed, and I wish that they were in the series more, but I understand why they're not. And then we go back to Impel Down for a moment, and Doflamingo is in solitary confinement, and he mocks Magellan and says that he knows the secret of Mary Joa, which prompts an assassin to come in and try to kill him, and of course, Doflamingo doesn't die from that. Assassin is immediately dealt with. And we get this really weird scene in the final scene of episode 2, which is someone carrying wanted posters to a very giant, straw hat just sitting in a room. I don't know anything about the straw hat. I've never seen the straw hat before, at least that I can remember. And I don't know what the, relevance of it is. Is straw hat, something more prevalent? Is it related to the Rock's pirates? I don't know. I have a lot of questions about the straw hat, and then the 3rd episode made me ask many more questions, and let's get into that. So Kaido is drinking when Big Mom calls, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, and she tells him that Luffy is headed to Wano, and that he's coming for Kaido's head. And she tells him that Kaido owes her a lifetime debt, but that he will kill Luffy anyways, and Big Mom says, hey, let's just pretend it's like old times, and let's be friends. And then we go to Kizaru, and he's heard that there's apparently no Wano intel coming out of Wano right now, and so that's really interesting, because Wano is one of the few areas that the world government is not in. And so they don't really have any spies there. Kaido's in control. Everything is really locked down on Wano. And so it's really interesting that Kizaru hears that there's still no intel here. And Garp is actually questioned by a character named Gion about Luffy's involvement, and then we meet this character named Tokikake, who they then discuss about Wano not being in the jurisdiction of the world government, and Rear Admiral Hina discusses Big Mom and Kaido, and Garp is called the hero of the Marines in this conversation and of the Rock's pirates, and we hear that the Rock's pirates were before Roger's era, before Roger was even captain of Big Mom and Kaido, because we do learn about that. And we learn that Big Mom was 28 at the time, and Kaido was 19 years old at the time that they joined Gold Roger. So that's really interesting. A lot of history that we're being given during these sections. And at Pangaea Castle, we see a ton of, sort of like Game of Thrones, we see tons of swords leading up to this throne. that is then like stuck like a quill, many different swords all around the throne. And I really love this section. I think episode 3 was my favorite. And we get a lot of lore about the empty throne, they call it. It's a capital E, capital T, empty throne, which symbolizes the peace with all of the armies of the world that are part of the world government. And we hear about King Starry thinking about becoming king of the world, which again is a point why I don't like this character already. We already have a character who wants to become king of the pirates, and I'm okay with that. I don't want a king of the world, though. So King Starry, I'm dismissing them right now. I hope they become more of an interesting character later, but I don't have any hopes. We hear a god is grabbing Shirahoshi, and Charlos is here. Neptune watches as she's slammed to the ground, and Lucci makes an appearance, one of my favorite characters from from Water 7. And so he's now a part of CP0, which is the intelligence agency. And Kaku is here too, with Stussy, or Stussy. And they talk about how the gods rule the upper realms, and the celestial dragons rule the lower realms. What does that mean? Who are the gods who control the upper realms? Because I thought the celestial dragons were the top of the top. I assumed that there were a level above the celestial dragons, but more on that later. So Neptune turns purple during this and apologizes to Odahime and attacks Charlie, which throws him really far, but it's into another celestial dragon's lower realm who hit him. And so we see a character named Saint Don Quixote Mosgod, who is the world noble from Fishman Island flashbacks, and he bows down to Neptune and dismisses CP0, which is a really big moment. This is a character that we've heard about, but we've never really seen them in the current day. So cool. I really like Mosgod. He is much cooler and a better person than his family member Doflamingo, and so that's cool. We see the elders for the first time this arc, and there's a mysterious figure talking with them, and it's revealed to be Shanks. What does that mean? Why is Shanks meeting with the elders? I don't know. I don't like it. I thought Shanks was a good guy. Why is he working with the elders? The elders are sort of the ultimate oppressors of this world. And let me just look at my notes, because I don't want to miss a detail. But Shanks talks to the elders, and he says he wants to talk to a certain pirate. So one of my questions when I saw this moment was, is Shanks a villain? And that is something that I am really having a hard time reconciling, because I thought he was a good character. But if he's working with the elders, then I don't know what to think, because the elders are objectively very terrible people. From all of the control that they practice on the world, and all of the sort of ways that they use in order to continue their exploitation of the world. And so it's really sort of shocking to see Shanks in this location talking with them. I thought he would be with Sabo, which we'll get in a second, because Shanks has fought Kaido many different times throughout the series. We keep hearing about him fighting Kaido. And so I'm very curious why he is meeting with the elders. That's just something that I will have to learn later. But Mosgod says that he'll help the Fishman Island people sort of increase the status and have them be more protected, because everyone's just sort of shocked about what's going on with Fishman Island, with Luffy helping them, and then just everything with Fishman Island. It's cool, but we see Pell meeting with Vivi, and he says that Cobra is talking to he is talking to Fujitora and King Riku of Dressrosa. And Pangaea is, this is a detail that I wrote down, but Pangaea is very well guarded. We see a lot of scenes of guards and just a lot of defense mechanisms that they have. But Queen Dowager shows up, and she shows up to the gate where the Land of Gods is, and introduces Roswad, who is Charlos's father, and he taunts the Don Quixote family and then shows off his new slave, Kuma. And he says that it's his turn to rent him. And my brain exploded at this moment because I knew that Kuma was the sort of... He was the one that they modeled the pacifistas after. But Kuma, I always assumed, was just a automaton, like a robot. And so I was really shocked to find out that he was actually a previous king of a nation, and that he's been sort of, trying to think of the word, he's been given like a lobotomy and forced into servitude for the celestial dragons. And anybody can rent him if they can afford him. And we see this guy, Roswad, and he just beats the shit out of Kuma and taunts him and just really treats him horribly. And we see Dowager suddenly become Bonnie, and Molly and the Hot Pirates show up, and they are trying to rescue gentle Kuma because they knew him before he became who I know Kuma as. And it's really shocking. I was not expecting all this information about Kuma. And I really hope that we get a lot more about Kuma as soon as possible, because he is someone who we have seen through the majority of One Piece. And he is someone who we don't really know anything about. And so now we finally are getting some information, and the door is shut in our face. And we don't get any more information. So, Oda, you better give us more information, is all I have to say. But they say that failure is not an option, and we meet this really cool Dracula guy who is talking with Cobra about Wano. And he talks about Wano being lawless and talks about Luffy. And that's when the Reverie officially begins, and they discuss the future of the world. And things seem really positive. Cobra requests an audience with the elders, and they say that the Nefertari family was only a member of the first 20 families that stayed in Lower World 800 years ago. And they say there will be a great cleansing, and then we get this really mysterious scene of this shadowed figure looking at flowers. And who is this character? I personally have no fucking idea. This is a really fascinating character, though, because a few gods show up and tell this character, the shadowed character, hey, Lord Emu, the elders are here. And I was like, wait a minute, like, Lord Emu, like, what's this name? Who is this Lord? Who are they Lord of? Why are the elders talking to Lord Emu as a subordinate? Like, what does any of this mean? And so he leaves the Chamber of Flowers, and where he was standing, there's a ton of shredded bounties of Blackbeard, of Luffy, of Shirahoshi, and Vivi. Why? I don't know. I have no idea what his goals are, but Lord Emu stands at the empty throne. No one else is around except the elders. And one of the elders says it's time for a new light to be taken out. And another elder asks for a name from Emu, and that it will be done. And then we cut to credits. Too soon, I said. And so my first question was, is Shanks working for Lord Emu? And if he's not, then how does that relationship between the elders and Shanks, how does that relate with whatever the Elders and Lord Emu are working on. Because there's obviously a lot of stuff going on, but oh my gosh. I have a lot more questions than I have answers from this arc, and I just really enjoyed this arc. I think it's one of my favorite shorter arcs, I guess. I don't think it's anywhere near my favorite in terms of impact and sort of big events. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's my favorite arc, but in terms of mini arcs, it's definitely one of my favorite. And I am very curious who this Lord Emu guy is. I'm very curious about Kuma and where that storyline will go. There's just a lot of information that was given in this arc that I just need to know more. And I'm so happy to be finished now with Reverie and about halfway done with Wano, because Wano is shaping up to be one of the best time skip arcs. But we shall see. There's definitely some low points for Wano, but I don't know. I'll cover that in the next video. But thank you all so much for watching, and please leave a comment below. I really love talking with people about One Piece, so the more comments, the happier I am. So thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.